All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me in another episode of Maps Are Dead with Mike D. I'm your host, Mike Dauphinee. We're talking about how you navigate your life when the world's run off the map. Again, this whole concept is the idea of given how much change there is in everything from technology to politics to education, is that we are in a situation where you have to navigate your life differently. Super excited. Matt Brown joins us today. Matt, thanks for making the time to kind of sit down and chat.
You bet. Happy to be here, Mike.
And so, Matt, you work in technology. It ends up crossing all kinds of different spaces of like aerospace and other things for a large company, which we're going to leave nameless today. But I was kind of digging in. I was like, okay, Matt, I need to understand where you're at, whether it's software or if it's tech specific and what that looks like. And you kind of sit as an individual contributor in some ways,
That's right.
but in software product engineering, right? Is that right? And so it's fascinating because people right now, it's interesting how people are understanding products and tech, but like it could be, I mean, the jobs overlap industries, right? And the world's kind of colliding, right? You're doing software engineering and product engineering, but it could be anything from aerospace to software products to servers to whatever. It's kind of all over the place a lot of times, it seems.
Yeah, as an engineer, I've got a community of nerds that that I hang around with. And it's funny, we get together and it takes a good 30 minutes to understand exactly what the other person's doing in the industry. It's crazy right now.
It's a mad world out there ultimately, but it's funny. We're trying to start every episode as we've kind of progressed in these calls with the idea of what's a core question. If we could spend the next 45 minutes to an hour unpacking a core question, and when we got introduced, my friend was like, "Listen, you got to talk to Matt because he's asking questions." And I was like, so when we get the email in advance, we're like, hey, what's one thing we could focus in on? And what was your question? Like, if you're like, what's a good focus for us over the next hour of what a professional is asking? Like, what's a good topic for us to dive into?
Yeah, the question I have, I hear not just in my own head, but from colleagues as well. I mean, within tech, you can make a lot of money right now being an individual contributor, and you can have an entire career there and be really successful. And then there's another sort of vector that you could go on, which would be a sort of more the management director level. And that's away from individual contributor and more into like big picture thinking, strategizing, things like that. And I think for me, and I'm hearing this from others, I'm at a spot where it's sort of a pivotal spot in my career. I could double down and continue to be an individual contributor and have a really great career there. Or I could pivot at this point. And so I was interested to get connected with you, do the Strength Finders test, and figure out, am I swimming upstream? Like, I'm okay understanding, like, look, this is the particular set of skills that you've been given, and you rock in
Yeah,
this area. Keep
yeah.
doing that. Or you've got this foundation, you could develop some things in a different area, and that would parlay into sort of this new section of your career. So I'm really curious to explore that.
Yeah, because I think because I got your top five here. So for those following along at home, you've got a couple here that people will have. So you've got relator, developer, arranger, belief, and then achiever. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that all checks.
Okay. Relator, developer, arranger, belief, achiever. And so, yeah, because we'll be able to unpack is that because you really do have a couple options in here. We'll dive into that. In the midst of this, Matt, I think because part of what I want to understand, because there is a question when it comes to understanding how to use our strengths for performance, there's a question of the things you can do with the role, right? In fact, in my book Extraordinary that I wrote, which is kind of the whole start of this podcast question, is this idea of figuring out how to navigate from the inside, is that there is almost like a triangle of identity, which I'm like, the bottom of that triangle is natural talents and strengths and abilities. And then there's a purpose of like what you could apply those natural talents to. But then there is the whole side of the triangle that's about the passion, right? And the purpose, I always say, the purpose of a knife is to cut. Okay. And so the basis of a knife is going to have different elements, right? It's going to have a handle, it's going to have a blade, and it's going to have an edge. Now, you can use a scalpel to cut a steak, but it's not really what the scalpel was designed for, right? Its best purpose, its best use. You get the most excited at watching that knife fillet different things. I mean, I love watching these videos of like people using scalpels to cut grapes and things like that, or the blunt instruments, or I love when you use a
Yeah,
tool like a press to squish on the Instagram videos, the press that doesn't exist to crush, starburst, but it's very exciting when it does. Like
really satisfying to watch them though.
very satisfying to watch all these tools used in different ways. But I think before I dive into, hey, here's how you can apply your strengths and here's how we make the use of that. When you think about the career trajectory, it's usually useful to look back. How did you get here? like where you are right now at this point in your career, how did you get here? Would you say that the track to being an engineer and being an individual contributor, was that a path you picked? Did you know this is the road you were going to be on? How did you get from undergrad
Yeah.
to like here?
Yeah. I'll make it a short story, but I started as a literature science and arts major at University of Michigan. And I was 2 years
Literature,
into that
okay,
thinking life was
literature,
great.
science, and arts. Okay,
Yes.
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In 2 years in, I thought life was great. And then I looked at like the three or four other buddies I was there with, and they were all pursuing engineering. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then they started talking about when they graduated, the jobs they would get. And I went, crap, what am I going to do to make a living? And I kind of thought, well, when I was a kid, I loved taking things apart, especially if it was like an old TV or an old radio or something
Mm.
like that. And then now here's where the achiever fits in for me. I thought, what seems like the most difficult engineering track to me from where I'm sitting? And electrical engineering just seemed like, okay, that's got to be the hardest. Like, you can't even, what are electrons doing? You can't even see them. So I thought, okay, that's the most difficult. So that would translate into the best job. And I got really tactical at that point. And it's interesting as I reflect on that. It was sort of a moment of like, it wasn't about dreams. It wasn't about thoughts of career. It was about, I want to have some money when I get done with this degree. It was largely practical. About into it, as an engineer, I looked around. I kind of figure out, okay, here's a place that I'm weak. Here's a place that I'm strong. What do I need to study in order to be better in this position? But it was largely about achieving. Like, what can I do so that I can achieve? And the same trajectory was like, well, look, I want to get raises. I'd like to be promoted, and I'd like to continue to do interesting work. So those are kind of the three main things. And that's worked for the last 25 years or so. The intersection that I'm at right now is that I really don't care about a career. And it may be just that I've run out of gas in this and I should go back and write books. I don't know. You'll have to tell me if that's a successful
Yeah,
endeavor,
I
but
mean, well, it could be, but I think, just even to back up a second, so when you were, so your friends talking about, hey, these are the jobs we're going to get, kind of awakens a question in you that you definitely need to get answered. But before that, you're picking, literature, science, and like when you picked that initially, did anybody ask you that question? I mean, did anybody ask what job are you going to get with that? What was the draw to it initially? Why was that even an interest for you?
to be honest, Mike, I think it was an autopilot response. I think it was me and my two other brothers are first generation college graduates. So my parents were thrilled that, like, you're going to college. That's great. You're going to a major college, even better. So your outlook already looks better than what we think that we have given you in life. And so I think it was largely unknown. It was like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I'm supposed to go to college. I'll just do this. So it wasn't even out of like a sense of a dream or some career that I thought I might have in front of me. But as I look back, I'm a poet at heart. Honestly, that's what's inside of me. I'm a
Yeah.
poet. I love language. I love writing. I love reading. I love the philosophical conversations at the table
Hmm.
more than any conversation about AI or tech or what's happening in the financial industry. That stuff doesn't turn me on. But as soon as someone starts talking about a social dimension of their life, something's happening in
Hmm.
their family, some obstacle that they're trying to overcome, that's where I turn on.
Okay. So that which lends itself to literature in some ways, right?
Yes, of course.
It's a more human conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
You your engineering buddies are geeking out about what they're doing, and they're talking about the jobs they're going to get. Practicality kicks in somewhere in there. Do you know what? Do you know what it was that was? Because practicality makes it. Was it the challenge? Because I hear two things, right? On one level, I hear a very practical element, which suddenly is going. The philosophical guy is starting to ask practical questions, but simultaneously going, man, but I want to answer the challenging question, right?
Yeah,
I want to do the most difficult thing, which is electrical engineering. I don't simply want to, and not only electrical engineering, but I'm going to do that at Michigan, right? I'm going to do things that are different. I'm going to go into that space, and so which is a challenging deal. What was there a shift that caused the practicality? Was it, man, I fell in love and all of a sudden I'm asking different questions? Because I'm interested to know what element started to temper the philosophical belief part of you.
Okay, you can interrupt me and steer how this. I haven't been on your
Go
podcast
for it.
before, so I don't know
Go for
how
it.
it goes. But I'll take us into the depths of like the heart and soul of the
Please.
human journey. But for me, how do I say this in a very respectful way? I hadn't yet answered the father wound question in my life,
Mm, yeah.
and I hadn't yet answered, which I think many men have, the question: Do I have what it takes? And that's where I was at in college. Do I have what it takes? And the best approximation I could come up with to figure that out was, am I as good or better than my father?
Mm-hmm.
That's subconsciously, like if you would have interviewed me when I was 19 or
Right.
20, I couldn't have come up with any of this. But now looking back, that's what it was. I was trying to figure that out. My dad spent 40 years he didn't have a degree, but he was 40 years basically in engineering at Pontiac Motors, General Motors. Made
Mm-hmm.
a career at that. Did really well. And so I'm thinking, okay, if that's the standard, I want to destroy that standard. And if I do that, then I think I'll know that I have what it takes, and therefore I'll have purpose and meaning, and I'll understand what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you can see how that's all set up for failure, but I think that's what set me on that trajectory of, well, then I'm going to pick the hardest one that I can think of, and that's electrical engineering. Now, my aerospace buddies would say it's not the hardest, but that's a conversation for the nerds to sort out. But that's what was going on in the heart and soul of me at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I make a joke every time I teach strengths. I'm doing group workshops where I'm like, yeah, there's nothing worse than watching team leaders work out their daddy issues on their team, male and female. It's kind of our joke.
Yeah.
And I say that half jokingly, but I think it was definitely true in that the prefrontal cortex of our brain is not fully developed before the age of 25. And so the dominant shapers of our paradigm are birth to 10 and 15 to 22. And birth to 10 is family of origin, which creates our framework of love and safety. And then 15 to 22 is peer groups that are focused in on us embracing the parts of ourself we like. But then we're
Mm.
asking some real questions ultimately in the midst of that season about how do we measure ourselves, especially if achiever is a part of a theme. And so one of the interesting things is people will associate achiever with wanting to achieve, not surprising, and knowing how to do hard work. People with the Clifton Strength theme of achiever end up naturally knowing how to work. They think about work, they deliver work. But one of the elements that can drive decision making is they're driven to choose the thing that has clear measures.
Okay.
And so when it comes to ambiguity, a project that is going to be a win, but the win will be ambiguous, versus a project that has a win where at the end of the day, it's measurable. This was not here and now it's here. The level was here and now it's there. Is that I often say our Clifton Strengths themes will reveal how we communicate, how we, so it's a filter on our mouth and our ears, how we make decisions, meaning how we collaborate, I should say. Communication, collaboration, meaning what we're looking for in partners, what we'd like to contribute to a game, to a team.
Hmm.
But then also how we prioritize decisions in moments, one or the other. And people with the themes like achiever and responsibility, they have a default appetite for something that has clear measures.
Mm.
And so things they don't understand, where they're like, I'm pretty clear ambiguously that this would be the impact, but I couldn't pile it up and say, this is the impact. And so if your brain goes, my father works at a plant and is doing X, Y, and Z, and he's there, and I suddenly would be able to say, I worked over here and I'm producing this, this, and this, and here's the measures. It's a 1-to-1 ratio in some ways, potentially in my head. It's what I hear. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Yeah. And I think if I'm going to get really down and honest about it, one of the measurable things was income.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from any other facet that I could line for line match up against dad, it was income. I think I wanted to just crush it there, and that would be something measurable. In the beginning, I think it starts out as this is about dad, but it's not. In the end, it's answering my own question. I've done my own work around my father. He's still living. I have a great relationship with him. So that none of this is to disparage him. To me, it's an indicator on the dashboard. I see that now, and I go, okay, I know what you're after. I know the longing behind that one.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing, and this, by the way, this is where these conversations go, Matt, just so you know, this isn't an odd conversation. This is where these go, is that part of us maturing and Gallup would say our strengths are established in those windows of time before the age of 22, and then they're refined over time. There is quite a bit of stability. Typically 3 to 4 themes will stay stable over time as people take Clifton strengths. But one thing about achiever is a very commonly occurring theme. A lot of people have it. It shows up in top 5 a lot for folks. But what the struggle can be is redefining what we think the measures mean. I think when we're younger, we grab the measures that we understand, where I'm getting paid well, and I can say, look, I'm paid well. And in fact, more and more, as myself and our coaches talk to clients who reach out for these navigation briefs that we do, or these one-offs that we can do to try to help people, is that this question of, I picked a measure, like money, like a promotion, it doesn't mean to me what it meant anymore. And I'm out of practice in finding new measures because I took a measure that the world sold me. Like, right? I mean, because you wouldn't be alone in that. You didn't come to the conclusion that, hey, making more money than my parents made is a good idea. Like, that's a sign of it. And so the world's going to tell us, get a promotion, do these things. And all of a sudden, we're measuring it and we're clear. Yep, these are the dollars. Yep, this bonus equates to this. Yep, this job is the promotion over this. And suddenly we get to a point where we're like, it doesn't mean what they've told me it meant.
Yes. Yeah. What's interesting is, as you're describing the achiever, some of it fits for me perfectly. And some of it, I don't know if this is where I came from, but I work really well in ambiguity. So in other words, like when it comes to the marketing part of my job, one way is very really quantifiable. Like, okay, what were the activities you did? What kind of qualified leads did they bring in after this program? How much revenue was increased? Spot on. That's all really good. And then there are other parts of marketing that are like more in the category of, we do these things because we know they're the right things. They're leading indicators that will help produce business in the future. Can we measure them? No. I actually love working like that's why I say I'm a poet at heart. There's an artistic side that I love working in, that piece of it, where it's where the finish line isn't really clear, but you just know that what you're doing is right. There's a part of that I really thrive as well.
Well, I think so. For me, as I hear that, and we'll dive back into your story a little bit. The piece of belief ends up being it's like an Uno 4-color card. You get to put whatever, or perfect, even better yet, it's an Uno wild card. You get to put whatever color card combination you want into that.
Yeah.
It can be about God. It doesn't have to be about God. It can be about children or family or other things. But in general, it can be about creativity. It can be about being supportive. It's whatever. It's typically, it's not necessarily flexible as much as it is unique to you. People think with belief, they have the same beliefs. Clifton Strengths themes, the theme of belief does not equate to a set of beliefs. It means that you have beliefs, whatever they are. Okay. And so the philosophical warrior poet side of you goes, yeah, this is the poet part of me. The warrior goes over and does this, but this is the poet part, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the ambiguous creative component of you that mixes with the developer part of that is that, so while achiever may fit in some elements, what's interesting to me is there'll be moments when it answers it where you lean into it, but then seasons later where you're like, wait a second, that didn't get me where I want, and your brain reaches for other answers.
Yeah, that checks. Yeah, I think I operate out of intuition a lot. So intuition leads itself more towards that like ambiguous artistic side of things. I intuit this is what should happen, and that's what I act on. It seems, even though I'm an engineer, you would kind of imagine that everything is based on data, but that's, however uniquely way I'm put together, that's not my primary. I don't start with data. I somehow start with an intuition, and then I do the research.
And so you're in school, you change majors, you go into engineering, and you're stepping into roles. Are you actively navigating that? I mean, Matt, you're as bald as me. I'm assuming you're younger than I am, but I'm 51 or whatever. So but as you're navigating,
hey, spot on. I'm 51. Same.
Right there. There's a look that comes with us 51-year-old guys.
That's what we got. Yeah.
At what point does the autopilot turn off? Because I'm talking to a lot of people right now, 35, 40, who are suddenly asking the question, wait a minute, is my ladder against the wrong building? Have I got on the wrong train? And between the kids and the mortgage, they're getting more and more concerned about their ability to change course. And they're asking these questions. And so I stepped off at 30. For me, it was 30. That's when I walked away. I was 30 years old working for Hewlett Packard. And I had this moment where I'm like, this is not my life. I'm miserable. What am I doing here? and walked away
Yeah.
from everything. For you, we're asking the core question is leader versus individual contributor. But in general, how are you navigating your life at this point?
Yeah. Let me, I've got an intuition, a way to answer this question. That word. Right now, I sense I'm at a point where you're bringing belief into this, and I'm going to bring God into it. I feel like God is saying, what do you want to do? No heavy-handed, like this is what you should do, or Matthew, this is the way I made you. You should do this. So there's a pause right now where he's asking me, what do you want to do? And that question is a little terrifying to me because it does mean coming off of autopilot. It does mean making um, new decisions about sort of the arc of my life. And I mean, you're asking when did you come off autopilot? I think I did a set it and forget it kind of
Yeah.
approach to my career.
Yeah.
I got going on this. It provided what I needed. Most of my interests were outdoors, mountain biking, climbing, being in the mountains, things like that. Uh, Met my girlfriend who became my wife. So it was sort of like the career that I had was that bus was rolling down automatically down the road. And it was providing a lot of, I guess I would say my mind was always on like, is this something that's sustainable? And so in that, I always had an eye on like, am I doing something new? Am I doing something that would be I could parlay into another career or another job if I needed to. So for the past 20, 25 years, those boxes have been checked. And it's only recently, and this is when Destry introduced me to you. It's only recently where I've just kind of like poked my head up and went, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And that leads to the question of, am I just burnt out on the individual contributor role
Mm-hmm.
and I need some new challenge? Or is there an entirely new career that I need to pursue? Those are big questions.
Yeah. Because here's one of the things that's interesting to me as I coach people through different phases of professional transition is that many of them step into roles with one relationship to their occupation. In the early days, it's a vehicle. Any job that moves you forward, what's sustainable? You use all the words. What's sustainable? What's progressing? It's in my field of study. I feel competent and mildly successful, but it's okay because it's just a vehicle for the rest of my life. The rest of my life, it's like I have the outdoor activities. I have the fun. The challenge is the work takes up a lot of our life and takes up a lot of space in that. And so then they want to renegotiate. They're going, hey, my occupation is no longer a vehicle. I want it to be a calling. I want it to have more meaning, or I want to give myself to more meaning and time. And I think, and it is a different question. And I think that's part of the question, Matt, ultimately, when you process through that is in progressing and looking to go, hey, how do I progress? Because you have developer, which doesn't like to be stuck. Developers like to be growing. The
Hmm.
developer has a gift of progress and incremental improvement. And you start to realize, was there a point when you realized I'm going to outgrow the curve I'm on? You know what I mean?
I think it's happened. I think it just happened, honestly, Mike.
Yeah.
I think it just happened. I think I've got a greater capacity that I've been operating in, but um, the total package of my life, I mean, I've got an 8-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Okay.
And so I've just arrived in that window. I don't know if you're a
Yeah.
parent, but there's a window where
No.
things get a little easier.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
no
They're not
longer changing
toddlers.
diapers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not toddlers. You're not changing diapers. You're not up all night. And there's this sweet window that we've just moved into that I think has opened up some breathing room to ask the questions that we're talking about. But I think so. The career that I've been in has been largely challenging the entire arc of it, which has kept the
Okay.
developer in me really happy. I've been at the front of technology for most of my career. And the switch that's happening, the details aren't really important, but the switch that's happening is I'll no longer be in that position
Okay.
if I stay with the company that I'm at.
Okay.
Um, And I think it's interesting that you're pulling out the characteristics of a developer because that scares the developer. And
Mm-hmm.
I go, I don't know how long I can stay at that role. I could probably make money and provide for my family at that role. The thing that I'm not conflating with this, though, is purpose and meaning. Maybe I am subconsciously, but I think in my heart, Mike, my purpose is I'm a father first,
Mhm.
and I'm also a father to, I'll say, other sons that I mentor in the community. So that combined with my faith life,
Yeah.
like form the core of my identity and my purpose in life.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be also when a developer is bored at my career, I think that means, well, I'm not getting purpose anyway out of that. I never expected that from my career. So now what do I do?
Mm. Yeah. Because it
I
can,
think that's the
and
intersection.
yeah, the developer in you does kind of, it can start to step into how do I fill this gap of the need to grow. Here's the thing for me, Matt, is that as I think about your profile, again, kids and that space, if they were on the inside of this conversation right now, I'm sure they probably on some level that you're their dad, but they're on the inside of this conversation and they're sitting here watching us having this talk, and you're modeling for them, knowing that they're going to model their life over the choice you're about to make right now. What for you as a person with belief, which I'm hoping because you have a gut and instinct on some of these things, what would be the takeaway that you're like, wow, I really hope that my kids watching me make this choice at 51 years old, this is
Yeah.
what I want them to see me considering right now?
Well, you just raised the stakes. What do I want them to see and take away from it?
How would they understand this? If they were in this moment, what would you hope they understood about the questions you're asking if they knew their dad was having these questions right now?
Yeah. Yeah. My first thought as a father is to protect them from this conversation because it will mean uncertainty for them. And, for a kid that translates into fear often. But that's not the question you're asking. I get it. What would I want them to take away from this? I would want them to see that they're free to make a new choice at any point in their life. Honestly, that the idea of being stuck
Mm-hmm.
is a human construct. And that's what I think I would want them to see. That even if they chose to do something, I realize I'm telling my story and their story at the same time.
Okay.
It's weird. But I would want them to see that, like, look, you can choose something and do it for 5 years and decide this isn't for me, or you can do it for 25 years and have the moment and go, you know what, I want to try something new, or I want to have a new approach to what I've been doing. Oops,
Okay.
just lost my earbuds. There we go. We're back. Does
I
that start
think,
to get into the question that you're asking?
well, that's the question I'm asking, because I think the reason I ask you that question is one, I want to give you a little perspective of, just so you know, when you have belief is very aware that they're living out their influence.
Hmm.
In your family, your choice, the wake you're going to leave behind you, your legacy is in how it's lived. So anytime you're wondering about navigating something like this with belief, you can trot out the what do I hope is the message somebody's receiving from what I'm doing. And it will
Hmm.
start to shape the choices you're making and the questions and the little way, kind of the random thoughts that have made it into your head that'll kind of start to create noise. And you're like, well, wait a minute. If I'm making a choice right now and I'm modeling something, what is it
Yeah.
I want to have modeled? And it will start to shake out the dust.
Yeah, it's interesting. More of that settling in, I'm realizing there is something to be resolved there inside for me. Because on the one hand, what I want my kids to see is that work might not be the most important thing in your life, that we all have to work, and it might not be the most important thing. So
Mm-hmm.
in that, I want them to see that a priority of like prioritizing family, community, friends, people that I love. To me, that's a core belief. So that sort of guides me into what I do. On the other hand, the thing is to be resolved is I want them to go, well, look, you're going to spend however many hours a day working a job or starting a business or creating a career. You should probably do something that interests you and is part of your passions and provides some level of satisfaction so you can do it for the long haul. Those two aren't exactly congruous.
and,
There's
and
this
they can be, but they
discord
can
there.
be. They can be because both those things live inside of you, Matt. Right? Like both of those things are existing right now. You're someone who believes in doing something that is meaningful, while simultaneously saying, "I'm not dead yet, and I desire to keep growing."
Hmm.
And it's okay that I endured a lot of. It's not like you did it wrong. It's not like the previous job I've done it wrong. Oh,
No,
I was on autopilot, and so as if autopilot's bad. I'm like, no, autopilot serves a really big purpose. I mean, it exists for
yeah,
a reason. The trick is when autopilot's left on too long, and we have expectations of autopilot.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this is the bigger problem is that most people put their lives on autopilot and then forgot they turned the autopilot on. And they're
Yes.
wondering why it's not responding to them the way it should, and it's not getting them places, because now the thought of turning off autopilot is too scary.
Yeah. And the purpose for me of autopilot, I think during the last 12 years has been survival. Like, so raising
Sure.
kids, walking a mother-in-law
Yeah.
through 5 years of cancer,
Yeah.
being married, all the things that cause uncertainty and are challenging. So for me, the thing was, okay, put this on autopilot. It's a known thing. It's producing what I need. Will I survive all of this other stuff? And now, like I said, now that I've got a spot like an open field to kind of
Hmm.
stick my head up. Yeah. Is it terrifying? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be terrifying. I mean, but the reason I bring it up is the fact that one, I think I want you to be able to understand that you can use your belief to help shake out the noise. Two, developer is a key theme that allows you to step into new things. Part of the challenge can be as we age, we become less and less. We have our memories become further and further away of being a beginner. Or we like incremental. And so the roles you've been in before are incremental growth. They're
Sure.
incremental improvement. And to step into a new role that doesn't have as clear that level of growth, where you're like, wow, I could do this for a season of time, but then I'm likely going to have to shift out of that.
Right. Right.
It's scary in some ways.
Yeah. And I should say what I think I'm right now trying to sift through is I think like if anxiety and excitement were a pie graph,
Hmm.
I'm an engineer, so let me do this.
Sure.
If anxiety and excitement were plotted on a graph, even if anxiety was a small sliver of that, it speaks really loudly in the heart.
Sure.
So I think there's a large portion of me that's actually really excited about the fact that I'm at the precipice of something new.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the part of me that there's uncertainty, there's a part of starting over, just the unknown. That piece causes some anxiety. That's why I would say, like, when you said terrified, that resonated a little bit. But it's not the overarching message. Like I think
No.
within there, there's a lot of excitement of like, ooh, what could be next? I don't know, and that excites me.
Yeah, I think anxiety, we always talk about like anxiety and fear. They're very, very similar. I think being able to step in and our minds are meaning making prediction machines, right? Our brains, the good news is we get to decide what meaning is and we can decide what something means. And there's very little, it feels the same for me before I did my first talk and when I've done my 10,000th talk at this point, over
Yes.
20 years of doing this, there's still a feeling. We call it pregame a little bit, but I get to tell myself what that means now. But I think part of the question that I think that really ends up, I think it'd be a good way to focus in on is what is the intention, and we would say vision, that overrides that fear or that voice of anxiety that's very loud, even if it's small. The reality is it's loud and it needs to be either silenced or configured into something else or tuned differently. We'll often talk about with clients, we say, you set a vision for who you want to be. There's a meta vision, it's like your whole life. And then we say moments should have vision. And I tell people all the time that you always have a vision for every moment you're in. Either it's a vision you set or it's a vision to avoid a pain, which we call the four. Dr. Max Maltzby came up with survival needs: feeling good, looking good. We have four needs: feeling good, looking good, being right, or being in control. So Dr. Max said we have a natural drive to feel good, or look good, or be right, or be in control. So it can be all four, sometimes one or two or three. And so I'll tell people, good news is, Matt, we have a vision for every moment of life that we're in. And either we're setting the vision for what we want to be in that moment, or our brain defaults to feeling good, looking good, being right, or being in control. And so part of what can be powerful in this moment, even taking this phone call with me, this wrestling is that going, do I have a vision of a commitment of who I want to be that is greater than any potential of my four fatal fears or my what's called survival needs there?
Hmm.
And so your vision of that going, you know what? I want to be this in front of my kids. So
Yeah.
I can look at other roles. I can potentially become a team leader or an individual contributor. Why? Because my commitment is to being a person committed to growing and living fully alive.
Yeah. Yeah, the
right?
piece that speaks to me is there's a couple actually of what you just said. Living an unexamined life to me, that's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I don't want to live an unexamined life. I want to live an intentional life. So the idea, even if the word autopilot came out of my mouth, that kind of makes me recoil. That's not the life I want to lead. Though I understand there are times that it's necessary because
Hmm.
that's what you do in survival. So I get that. I just lost my train of thought, Mike. There was something important I pulled out of what you just said.
It does come back to these moments of having these moments because we're talking about this vision and these survival needs, but being committed to something
Yes.
that's greater
Yes.
than, and being able to set a vision that's higher than those. Because I think that's the biggest challenge we face is that we go into our own version of autopilot if we don't have a vision bigger than the
Yes.
fears.
Yes. That's it. It was fear. That's the one that caught my attention. Is I don't want to make decisions based out of fear. And I also equally don't want to be in indecision based out of fear. And I get the sense that's where I'm at right now is settling a bit, not even settling, but taking a pull off the highway into an exit ramp of just sitting in indecision because I'm not sure what's next. And I know that's not what God has for me. And it's not the kind of man that he's made me. And you're talking about what I want my kids to see, what I want them to observe. And that might be the biggest piece. I don't want to live a life that's making decisions based out of fear. I certainly don't want them to be doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing for me to confront at this intersection of my life is what is the fear that's keeping me from something or driving me to something else?
And just so we, somebody smarter than me once said, a complaint is the seed of a great vision.
Hmm. Yeah.
Is that I'm not big on an anti-vision where it's like I'm afraid, so I'm going to prevent it. I'm going to prevent something from happening. It can be a posture, but the fact you're like, hey, I would not want that to be the legacy I leave. Let's flip it on its head then. What in your mind would be the progressive version of that, where you're like, I want to see them moving towards versus I'm afraid they would see. But what would be the flip side of
Yes.
that? Actually, you know what? I would love for them to see this about me.
Yeah. I think I'd like them to see their dad step into the unknown and into risk with confidence that no matter what happens with that decision, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Apart from any level of outcome of success or celebrity or anything that they make because of that risk, I think that's the legacy I would like them to see is it's okay to step out. It's okay to take risks. In fact, that's where you're going to find that's where you're going to find life itself in those because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be challenging. You're going to fail and you're going to succeed. Sort of like feel like I'm coaching myself right now.
That's the whole reason. I mean, it's part of hopefully a good conversation ultimately, is because I
Yeah.
think this is how you use your belief, Matt. I'm just part of reason why I'm calling it out is that not everybody can do that, but especially with belief as a theme, the ability to take this, what is my philosophical wake, is a tool you can use to actually navigate that question. Because if I was your coach and you sit here and you're telling me, I want my kids to see a dad who is both adventurous, courageous, and resilient in some ways, and committed to
Yeah.
growth and living a life of purpose. And that's what I'm committed to. I'm going to be
Yeah.
that. You then say, okay, well, then if that was true for me today and I was facing jobs, knowing that I'm that person who has limitless resilience and commitment because he's surrounded by people who love and believe in him, what questions would I be asking about my next steps?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the question that I'm hearing from God, which is what interests you? The question is wide open with him. He's asking me, what do you want to do, Matt? And that's the one I'm faced with sitting in is what do I want to do? And I've got some ideas within tech that completely turn me on. They're different than what I've been doing for the past 25 years. And then there's other endeavors that turn me on that I would involve more risk
Mm-hmm.
and are ideas that aren't even kind of vetted yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How? Let me ask you. Let me ask you. I mean, we're gonna go there. Feel free to not go as deep in the answer if you don't. I mean, go as deep as you
I'll
want to
go.
go with me. But just ask
Yeah,
you,
I'll go.
what's your relationship with? What's your relationship like in believing yourself? When it comes to you
Hmm.
wanting something, Describe for me your relationship and believing in yourself.
Are you asking believing in myself? Like I believe I can do it?
I'm asking you for you picking through, only because I'm going to bring up. I've had people on this podcast who have people of faith, but especially people of belief show up. They usually have some kind of core faith, and you referenced yours as a big part of navigating your life.
Yeah.
That typically comes with core values, especially core concepts. It can also come, I find, with a struggle for knowing how to believe and trust themselves when they get to this point where they feel like their faith is saying, what do you want? And they're like, I'm out of practice. And actually, because I'm supposed to have no wants. I'm supposed to conceive a bigger plan. And so,
Yeah.
the question of going, what about just wanting it? How much do you believe that, you know what? I want to do something that has risk attached to it, and
Hmm.
my wanting to do it is enough.
That's interesting to me because if it's in the category of adventure life, and I mean that in like hucking myself off something on my mountain bike or doing something big when I'm skiing or snowboarding, those I have a really high set of beliefs in what I want to do and what I think I can do. I, I've often risked things that I shouldn't have been doing. So in that category, I have confidence in myself. I have confidence in taking risks. So I don't even know if I'd call it vision, but I have very clear desires of what I want to do.
Yeah.
When it comes to career, that seems like an underdeveloped muscle. Is probably the way I would say it.
Yeah. Because it's a different conversation and it's not as linear, and it's not something, it's not instantaneous. In a moment, there's a lot of resilience. You're like, you're running the likelihood of a spoke breaking and the wheel breaking and you going over and breaking, your arm, your leg, God forbid something worse, or going off a hill or jump wrong, versus something that has a commitment to it. Picking a
Yeah,
role that would require you explaining it, you justifying it, you going. There's longer term impact potentially on that.
yeah,
There's obviously
yeah.
something in your head. There's something in your head that's putting those in different categories. But I would suggest that there's something in there where you believe in your resilience in some settings, but
Yeah.
it's less in others.
Are you familiar with the movie Back to the Future?
Of course. Yeah.
Marty McFly.
Yeah.
He says to his younger version, he says he wants to ask this girl on a date. What if she says no? I don't know if I can handle that kind of rejection. That's what he says. He's kind of
Yes.
greasing his hair
Yes.
back over.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I can handle that kind of rejection. So I think in real time right now, things are popping up. This is a new thought. I think in terms of career, that one must hit so much more deeply into identity than the other things I mentioned, like mountain biking, skiing, all that kind of stuff. This one is, what if I decide this is what I want to go after?
Mhm.
And I go and try to interview for that, and I get turned down over and over again. And it's clear that I don't have the skill set, I'm too old for that, or I'm not the right fit, or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
sense in myself, I'm replaying that little spot of Back to the Future where Marty McFly's going, I don't know if I can handle that kind of rejection.
Yeah.
I get a sense that that might be something that's inside.
And if you did, just so you know, congratulations, you come by it honestly. Because it's a challenge, especially with belief in a profile, is that over time, is that the life you live is the story we tell. And what can happen is that we can make the past story the story you know how to tell. And to sort of suddenly, halfway through your story, 50, imagine a life to 100, halfway through your story, having to go, I have to find a new way to tell this, or I have to suddenly describe the next chapter. I have to be prepared to answer questions I've not answered before. And so, but I would say to you because I don't want to steal your entire night, is this idea ultimately of going, if I have a commitment to being a father and a man whose kids see him being resilient, whose kids see him committed to growing and doing things he's passionate about, is that finding a way to make that vision bigger than having to answer awkward questions at a dinner party or at a family gathering in a way where
Yeah,
you're like, I'm doing this because my kids need to see me fully alive. I'm choosing to step into being a beginner because my
yeah,
kids deserve a dad fully alive who can tell the story of just so you know, guys, you're going to be on tracks that are going to serve you well that suddenly won't. And you've got to have courage to do a thing that makes no sense to other people. And the ability to go,
Yes.
how do I know I'm resilient at 50
Mm,
years on? I'm more resilient to what I'm to the unknown than I am somebody who's simply perfect and ready for what's coming at him. It's the ability
uh-huh.
to say, I know how to lean into a belief in being resilient versus being ready for everything. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
And stepping into that in some
yes.
ways.
Yes. That's really good. It's another thing that's just coming out, Mike, as you're saying that is, um, that the story that I tell myself. You're saying like we live that we have
Yeah.
our own narratives, and that's how we end
Yes.
up living. And so the story, I'm realizing the story that I think I've been telling myself is hearing other friends either complain or brag about their career.
Mm-hmm.
And my reaction internally is that's so one dimensional. I'm tired of hearing people talk about their
Yep.
career, what they got this promotion, or this boss passed them over for promotion, or they're not being recognized, or they're worth more money. And in my mind, I think, look, this is just a moment of honesty.
Please.
I've wanted to be better than that. I've wanted to rise above that. And I think in doing that, I've overshot the mark in just completely dismissing a career of having value and having it linked into any sort of
Yeah.
desire. I think I wanted to decouple that. And that's not out of like my faith instructs me to leave desires behind. It's quite the opposite, honestly. My faith tradition embraces a tenet that is the way that God made you is revealed by your desires that come out of your
Yeah.
heart, your true desires. And I really believe that. And I think I've squelched those by overshooting the mark in this, like, I want to be better than the person that's always talking about their career. And so I'm just going to be the guy at the dinner party that doesn't even want to talk about the career.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. That's
Yeah. It's something,
ego. That's
which I was gonna say at the end of the day, it ends up being ego for us. Is that we start to realize that we're posturing and showing up in an effort to control other people's responses to us.
yeah,
And so the question at the end of the day, the question comes up of like, to come back to your question in our last few minutes here to pull us back together, is that recognizing the question of, hey, individual contributor versus team lead versus not. And people will give you all kinds of advice on that. I would say the vision of what is most interesting for you is the driver. And if that involves leading other people, then great. But more passionate about, I want the next phase of my life to be about creating X, Y, and Z. It's about doing this. And if that involves, honestly, like what's funny is you literally have the profile that could do either one. Achiever, belief, arranger is like project manager extraordinaire who knows how to juggle through multiple teams and other places. But developer relator knows how to take a group of 6 and lead a company of 1 million. Like mix them all together. You could quite honestly, you could be quite content going, yeah, I can, even without having people report to me, oh yeah, I can create interaction that facilitates across teams. I could actually
sure.
lead ability to play air traffic control and grow and listen and create life. And you probably would find that incredibly life-giving. But I think this conversation for me reveals that I would say the bigger question is you finding a cause worth your life. If you're going to spend the next 10 to 15 years of your life on it, is that you're asking the question of, is this the area, is this the direction, is this the vehicle I want people to see me give myself to?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing that I'm pulling out of this at the end, Mike, is it's okay to assign value to a career, to my job, to work. And that's it doesn't have to be singular. Like that can have
No.
value, that can be a core piece of who I am and what I want,
Yeah.
amidst other desires and core beliefs that I hold and operate in life. I think
Yes.
that's the thing that's you're helping me reclaim right now.
Yeah. Because I think that's the bigger, is that it doesn't mean we have to let it be the part of our life and not be the whole part. When we work with clients, we have them do an obituary and we say, pick a cause worth your life, a redemptive view of something you overcame and the people you want to be
Yeah,
responsible for. And they'll start with, hey, here's their job. And I'm like, just so you know, there's a lot of your life that has nothing to do with your job. You are going to
right.
retire at some point, and there was a lot before that. What else is
Yes.
worth your life? You're going to have
And
multiple
I
of
flipped
these.
that the other way. That's what
Yeah,
you're making me realize that I've flipped that the other way so that if you give me the obituary thing, I'm going to give you my resume of everything I did outside of my job. And you
right.
might rightly object and go, that's great. You spent 9 hours a day, 5 days a week doing
Yeah,
this thing. What about that?
yeah,
What came of that?
right. And that's a
And that's
different
a really good
conversation.
question.
And so I think you could dive into that question, but I think it'd be worth it, especially looking at belief is a weird little theme in that it doesn't have much, is that it's so ingrained. There's not something it's like, oh, I do this because of my belief, but it definitely anchors some of your profile to the point where I would do two things. I would have a conversation with people you trust the most, where you start to articulate things you've only wondered about, but haven't said out loud because you're worried about how it would come across.
Uh-huh.
Start with your wife and close friends, and then be like, well, what would that look like? Because you might step the next role, wherever you are right now, you might simply step into the next role as a placeholder. Because you're like, look, if there's something offered to you right now, you're like, I'm gonna step into this knowing that within 18 months, I'm likely gonna make a move over here because two buddies and I are gonna start a thing, or so and so has a startup and I wanna be a part of that, or whatever it may be. But
A
knowing the
rebound
next,
relationship.
it might simply be a bridge moment in that.
Yeah.
And so the decision of, oh, if I make this, I'm locked in. No. I'm stepping into it knowing what my long-term intent is.
Yes. Yeah. I hear a lot of permission in that, honestly, because like we look at my track record, I've spent the last 25 years at the same company.
Mhm.
So for me, I believe, I think this is another story that I'm telling myself. When I make the next step, that's going to be another 10 years. That's going to be another 15 years, which
Yeah.
loads too much on the front end on that decision. It puts
Yep.
too much pressure on it.
Yeah.
I like what
Belief,
you're saying. This could
responsibility.
just be the next thing that gets me moving to whatever
Right.
is next.
Yeah, belief, responsibility, and achiever are often very committed. And so their default is a thing has to be the long-term thing, or has to go to finish lines that they can see. The ability to
Hmm.
go, wait a minute, this next step is the clutch between gears. And if there's this clutch moment, I find something else where I am, I'll take that. But actually, it's legitimately, it's the step. It's not the platform. It's there's a reason steps aren't continuous. You climb steps and then you stop. And same thing. This is a clutch between gears. And so we're going, you know what my next role is, I could take it and do the hard work of getting really clear on what my commitments are to myself and what my vision is. And then going, how do I live that out in my choices in the next season of my professional career?
Yeah, I like this. This is turning up a bunch of earth that's been sitting fallow for a while, Mike.
Nice.
It's really good.
Well, I hope it's encouraging. I mean, that's why I say dig through the Clifton Strengths themes. Like look at the top 5 report. Highlight the sentences there's like a highlighted paragraph for each one of the 5. There's like a highlighted section. Pick through the sentences that really, really fit you. And even with belief, a lot of people make a belief statement. I'm like, go through, pull from all different 5 the sentences that really fit you, and make a paragraph for yourself. And see what that kind of does, just to kind of give you something to see it on paper, written by somebody else, to see if this fits. And you're like, oh, that part fits, but this part doesn't. And see what that means for a belief statement that you're like, if this was the wake of my life, I would be excited about this being people's feedback about me. And see what
Yeah,
that
I like
stirs
it.
up.
I like it. And I think you have a perspective. I hadn't heard of Clifton Strengths before, especially when you're talking about developer. I was always thinking that was outward. And you're saying take it out and look inward and see how that drives your own behaviors. I like that a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah, our Clifton Strengths teams, people don't realize it's the thing we give the world. Hey, help others grow. It's the thing we want the most. And
Hmm.
so
Like,
relators project safety and authenticity. They honestly prefer people who are safe and authentic.
yeah,
Developers
right.
help others grow. They want actually to be growing. Arrangers like to create organization to get to a target. They like their world to be organized but yet flexible. Belief, they live by core
Yeah.
values. They also want you to be influenced by their core values. Achiever, they love producing and serving you, and they love the measure of getting to measure things in their own life as well. And so it works both ways.
That's interesting. It mirrors the 5 love languages of Chapman.
Very much
Like
so. Very
I
much so. The
give
thing you
love the
give is
way that
what
I
you
want to
want.
receive love. Yes,
Yep.
that's right.
Matt, I really appreciate making time for me. If you are following along at home and you guys also would love to have some feedback, we have a thing called the navigation brief. There's a link in the bio. And what you do is you actually click that, just drop in your name, your 5 themes, and it's like Matt did, something you're navigating, and I will actually record you a 5-minute video of just me giving you what I think are the next steps. If you'd like that, please click the bottom. Matt, you were super brave and honest, dude. I really appreciate you.
Mike, thanks for leading me into the deep waters. Appreciate it. It's been really good.
You were brave, brother. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time, another episode.